Welcome back, everyone, to our Spectrum News special town hall. Hurricane Florence lessons learned. Live view of Emerald Isle right now, and joining me right now is Jeff Crum, our chief meteorologist in Charlotte. And you know, Jeff, we talked about this earlier in the discussion. Hurricanes, tropical systems bring a lot to the party, and the one thing that Dorian brought was a lot of tornadoes, including an EF2 tornado that hit that mobile home park.
It was one of the larger tornado outbreaks I can recall in recent years associated with a hurricane. And you know, the base of the system took a while to get in here, but it was those outer bands early in the day that started to feed in, the wind field all in place, and we started to see these warnings issued, I think 5:45 in the morning, all morning long through the afternoon hours, and we even had a couple as we got into the late evening and the early part of the overnight hours. And so there's a lot on the table with these systems, as you said, complex, and you just can't easily get out of the way when something is coming your way with these big systems.
And normally you and I are in the studio telling everybody where it's at. This young man right here, we put him on the front line. Jonathan Lowe, you've covered a couple of storms here, including Dorian.
I love it.
And Florence. But you know, the reason we put you out there is not for the show. It's to tell people it's dangerous out here, show them what they're facing. And how is it for you guys in the field?
Well, you know, one thing that I'll say, Gary and Jeff, is that we live these storms right along the people that are in these communities. So for instance, I was in Wilmington for both Florence and for
Dorian. They all run together.
They all run together. I was about to say Matthew.
Yeah.
But I was there for both storms, and during Florence it was substantially better or worse because we lost power early on in the week. So we were without power, ran out of food. And one thing you don't think about is not being able to find a gas station and riding around town, and there only being one gas station open that opened several days into after the storm had already hit. So we lived it right along with, and I think that's important because if it weren't for us and the newspaper and the radio, people would not know, you know, what's going on in communities like Fair Bluff.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for what you do when you're in the field like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's go back out to Emerald Isle and check back in with Mary Helen Jones.
Here, a week out from Dorian, you can still see these debris piles around the Boardwalk RV Park here in Emerald Isle. They're still going through cleanup. Right now, I'm joined by the mayor, Eddie Barber. Mayor Barber, last year with Florence, you guys got around 30 inches of rain. How did going through that storm last year prepare you ahead of Dorian?
One thing we did this year, we pre-positioned generators and pumps because last year we had like 30 or 32 inches of rain, and we knew it was important to have the generators and pumps in position, so we pre-positioned those before Dorian this year just in case we had that much rainfall.
And you mentioned some people weren't happy with that mandatory evacuation. How do you feel looking back on it?
I know it was the right decision to make. If you look at the RV park and saw the damage over there, I know the evacuation saved lives, and I'm so happy I issued the mandatory evacuation. And I think it's so important when the mayor issues the mandatory evacuation for people to please evacuate the beach. Our main concern is public safety, and that's why we do the mandatory evacuations for public safety.
And so you guys are going through a cleanup right now. Can you talk to me about the partnership you've gotten from your neighbors here?
It's been a wonderful partnership. The town of New Bern and the town of Jacksonville provided manpower and trucks and equipment. Local contractors have donated their time. Lowe's Home Improvement have just been so generous and given things. Our local community has really come forward, but it's been so wonderful to see our sister communities reach out and help Emerald Isle. I sent an email out in the afternoon, and within 30 minutes we got a positive response from New Bern and Jacksonville, and the very next day they sent people down here to help us. And it's just been wonderful to see how people have reached out and helped Emerald Isle.
And finally, you know it, we all know it, we're not out of hurricane season yet. So how do you take what you've learned from this and from Florence into the next few months?
Always be prepared, listen to the National Weather Service, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and sign up for our email text that you get from the city, which will tell you when there's a hurricane watch or a hurricane warning. And if you have a mandatory evacuation, please evacuate for public safety.
Mayor Barber, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much.
And this cleanup is still going on, but the message is that Emerald Isle is open for business. They are cleaning up quickly, and hopefully, just like the rest of the area, they can get back to normal life in the coming weeks and months. I'm Mary Helen Jones reporting live in Emerald Isle.
Mary Helen, thank you so much. Hopefully they can get in their homes too. It's important to them. We're back with our panel here. Tom Rickenbach and Mike Sprayberry, and of course our Chief Meteorologist Gary Stevenson and Jeff Crum. I don't want to sound the alarm here, but we've been talking, sort of beating around the bush here. How dangerous is this situation for the state moving forward, do you think, with these increasing storms?
I think, North Carolina is in a sort of unique position in the country where we have a low-lying coastal plain with large river systems that are prone to flood naturally. We've got very heavily populated coastal regions. We've got a very dynamic barrier island system. And add to that mix an increase in extreme precipitation, not only from hurricanes, but also from, regular weather systems that tend to be rainiest around this time of year as well, on top of the hurricane threat. And it's a region that's just, has always lived with extreme precipitation and will continue to live with that moving forward.
Mike, what keeps you up at night?
Just having these severe weather events coming one right after the other. And so right now we're tracking Umberto down in the Caribbean, and we just had Hurricane Dorian scrape by last week and actually make landfall here in North Carolina. So you can actually foresee a time when there would be one hurricane coming right after another. And so do we have the resources to ensure that we can respond adequately to that? So that's kind of what I think about. But even more than that, what about the people that are in the harm's way of these hurricanes? And so that's what keeps me up at night. We've got to figure out a way to help them, get them out of the floodplain, and that's why we're heavily engaged in buyouts right now.
The scariest thing I've heard all day today was when they were talking about Florence, and they said, "Oh no, not again." The other thing I always remember is when I go to these areas, especially after Matthew and went to Wayne County, they said, "Don't forget about us." They were almost afraid for us to leave the area because they thought they were going to be left behind. Gary and Jeff, he mentioned the storm sitting out there. I caught you guys already looking on your phones before we're going, checking the latest forecast. Yeah. I know you haven't checked it in the last few minutes here, but do we have things to be nervous about?
We've got two systems out there. The one off the Florida coast, which potentially, again, emphasis on the word potentially, could impact North Carolina sometime next week. Still far out. We just put a hurricane hunter in it today to investigate. We'll get the model data coming in from the information from that flight. But farther out in the Atlantic, just coming off the coast of Africa, we've got another system. And interestingly enough, generally speaking, we see about 85% of tropical cyclones in the Atlantic basin develop after August 15th. And we are in the climatological peak right now of the Atlantic Basin hurricane season. So if you're going to see a storm in the Atlantic Basin, now is the time it's more than likely going to occur. And the thing that keeps me awake at night is when you get back-to-back systems, the steering currents in the atmosphere are very similar. So you could have back-to-back systems coming in and impacting the same area within a few weeks of each other. And that's what we had 20 years ago this month with Dennis and Floyd. Once Dennis came in, saturated the grounds, filled up the lakes, filled up the streams, filled up the rivers. Here comes Floyd, dumps 12, 18 inches of rain, massive flooding after that. And generally in North Carolina, before we got Matthew, you normally had to have two back-to-back tropical systems within about a 2-week period of time in the same area, and you normally had catastrophic flooding. Well, that's what changed when we had Matthew a couple of years ago, but that's kind of what keeps me awake at night, especially this time of the year when we get in the heart of the Atlantic Basin hurricane season.
The thing for me, I think back to 04, 05, a pier mine in Florida. It's warning after warning after warning, and the public just becomes tired of the messaging, tired of the requests to leave home, tired of hearing the doom is coming, the flooding is coming, and they shut down, and then they don't respond, and then it makes it difficult. Yeah, it makes it difficult for our local governments. North Carolina, we have had a unique ability over the years to effectively respond to these disasters. And the key thing is people need to listen and comprehend, but I get it. You hear so much messaging coming your way that you just get worn down about it, and sometimes you just cease to function. That's the thing that keeps me up at night.
And quickly, Tim, what you said is a shift in the path 20 miles east or west can make a huge difference.
A wobble.
Yeah, exactly. Can make a huge difference on impact.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Appreciate your expertise and warnings and lessons for our viewers. New Bern was another area that got hit last year very hard. We talked about Wilmington already. We talked about Emerald Isle in our areas. Our Reuben Jones, who was there in New Bern last year, went back to check on the folks and see how they're doing there.
Well, when we were here a year ago, there was no way we could have joined you from this spot or anywhere near here. Today, the Neuse River is pristine, but the power that this river turned into for Hurricane Florence is still very much on the minds of people here.
I wanna know, have you ever seen rain?
Rain has taken on new meaning for people in New Bern. Musician Howard Matthews didn't recognize his home when the deluge of Florence poured in.
This one here is the worst one I ever seen.
Upstream from Matthews' vantage point,
everything was gone.
Kathy Price watched her house of 32 years lose all semblance of home.
All my memories, my photograph albums.
Her husband sent her photos of what little remained as she watched from out of town.
My husband and I have been married almost 49 years in December. And we've never not had a home. You think, my life is gone.
Life didn't end for anyone in Craven County, but for many, it was life-altering.
There are people who've been displaced from the county who are not back.
John Robinson Jr. is the chair of the Craven County Disaster Recovery Alliance. The Presbyterian pastor says Florence,
there's an appearance of normalcy,
didn't discriminate.
But behind that appearance are thousands of homes that are still damaged.
A quarter of homes in Craven County were impacted by Florence based on FEMA numbers. It's why Robinson and his church are building a volunteer village to house the workers rebuilding this county. A lot of progress has already been made. What did it look like when you first got back?
It was a war zone. Bottom line, it was a war zone.
Just a few miles outside of New Bern is the Fairfield Harbor community. The tranquil neighborhood was hard hit. Gloria Hodgert is a resident.
You'd go out on the golf course and you'd see a 40-foot sailing boat.
Less than a fifth of the homes were insured. The work remains, but Fairfield Harbor says 95% of the houses are rebuilt, this time on higher ground.
You lose almost 48 years worth of stuff.
Kathy Price didn't have insurance when Florence hit. She canceled it 2 months before the storm to save money for renovations. Today,
there's no room in here at all.
She's forced to imagine those upgrades from inside this claustrophobic FEMA trailer.
Couldn't even sling a kitten in there, as they used to say.
It can test a marriage. Price and her husband are preparing to move, but not out of town, rather next door into their new, rebuilt home.
New Bern, North Carolina is my home, and I will be here always until it's my time to go. This is it.
Despite the setbacks, whenever you talk to someone here, they want people to return to New Bern, enjoy the Neuse River, and not be fearful of it. In Craven County, I'm Reuben Jones, Spectrum News.
All right, so as the sun sets here in Fair Bluff, they are hoping for a brighter tomorrow. We want to thank the people of Fair Bluff for having us here tonight, Fair Bluff Baptist Church for hosting us. They have been unbelievable. Of course, all of our panelists as well. Gary and Jeff, thank you as well for everything that you do. It is different, and you mentioned it, going out of the studio and seeing this in person. We're looking at bare walls inside.
Yeah, it is. You look inside, you see the damage that's still there, the insidiousness of trying to recover from flooding. And it's difficult, it's a long time, it's frustrating, and a lot of people, as I said earlier, just give up and they move away, and these small towns fold and die off, and that's the sad part.
Which we were built off of, this country,
right.
small
It
towns.
was.
You know, it's amazing. I took a walk on the Blue River Walk they've got here, and it's just the beauty of the river, Lumber River, and to imagine that twice it came into the city and destroyed so much. Yeah. It is heartbreaking to get out and see this.
And our thoughts are with the people of Fair Bluff, Emerald Isle, and all the other towns in the state still recovering. Thank you for watching so much. Good night, everybody.